What's up, everybody? This is the Sports League podcast, back for another week. I'm your host, Alex Leak. We got Amanda on the show as always. And Amanda, a great week 16 to recap. A lot of fun, a lot of action.
Yeah, I mean, I hope everyone had a great week with their families or whoever you got to spend Christmas with. I know I had a great week, and I mean, this week of football was absolutely insane and a lot of great matchups, and we have a lot to talk about this week, so I'm excited.
Yeah, happy holidays, everyone. Merry Christmas. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the football on Christmas weekend. It's always a fun time of year, right around Christmas, and you get games on Christmas Day and Christmas Eve and Christmas night. It was watching it with family and friends. It was a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
I was a little weird about Christmas being on a Monday this year, but it really worked out. I mean, we got a whole weekend of football.
yeah, exactly. It was fun to have three Monday games.
Yeah.
And then Saturday games too. It was just a lot of, it worked out great for us.
Yeah, I made a great escape from family when you needed something something else to do.
Absolutely. So we talked about on previous episodes, we broke this week kind of into three episodes. So we talked about Thursday, the Rams getting a big win over the Saints. So the Rams, keeping the pressure on the Seahawks as those teams are fighting for that 6 or 7 seed in the NFC. Um, the Steelers getting a big win over the Bengals with Mason Rudolph. And how about the story of Mike Tomlin? Kenny Pickett is a saying that he's healthy and wants to start, but the Steelers are going to go with Mason Rudolph for Week 17 at the Seahawks. Do you like this decision by Mike Tomlin?
I mean, after the performance Rudolph just had this past week, like how can you not start him? Like your team has the momentum. The team was stoked with his performance. Like you saw that post-game reaction and stuff, and like, yeah, maybe it was because his name was Rudolph and it was Christmas and just the magic of Christmas or whatever. But like, how do you stick a guy on the bench after that kind of performance?
Do you think, I agree with you, but do you think this is any kind of indictment on how the Steelers feel about Kenny Pickett at this point? Like he's supposed to be the franchise quarterback, and the Steelers offense really hasn't taken off the way they hoped all season long, right?
I mean, it hasn't been working. He's been dealing with some stuff that's sidelined him. This other guy stepped in and had a great game. Let the guy who just had a great game come in again. Like, if he doesn't
Yeah,
show up, obviously Pickett will be back in, moving forward. Maybe he gets benched halfway through the game. But I mean, ride the momentum.
yeah. And they're at a point where it's must-win territory. They're 8-7, and so it's a must-win at Seattle in Week 17. So it's going to be a big game and a big opportunity for Mason Rudolph to prove himself in that one. Um, and then your Bills with a big win. It was a sloppy, hard-fought game, but the Bills did enough to get the win, get to 9-6, a three-game winning streak. And I'm gonna be very interested to see if the Bills they play at home against the Patriots and then at the Dolphins. If the Bills can somehow take a 5-game winning streak into the playoffs, then they'll be the hottest team in football going in, right?
I mean, I think the Patriots had an interesting game against the Broncos this week. And we'll talk about that in a bit. But I mean, Miami is a very, very weird team. So I'll be very intrigued to see how that matchup goes when we get to it.
Yeah, and it might be for the division, that Week 18 game. So that could be a playoff game in Week 18, Bills at Dolphins. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the Dolphins finish the season. They, 3-game stretch, right? And they checked off a big one by beating the Cowboys, but then they're at the Ravens and then versus the Bills. So we're going to find out a lot about the Dolphins and the Bills in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I cannot wait. They've got some good games to watch, and it'll be a lot of scrappy football coming up in week 17 and 18.
Absolutely. So, um, you were up what 7 games going into Sunday, right? Because you beat me with Rams Saints, so you had a
Yep.
7-game lead. Um, Colts at Falcons. Did we agree on this one? I think I took Atlanta and you took Indy, right?
Yeah, and I was kind of on the fence about this one because I don't trust either of those teams.
Yeah.
And I mean, you never know which version of Minshew or which version of Heineke you're gonna get. And th this one was a toss up for me, but I kind of leaned Colts because you were on the Falcons. So, I mean, you pulled this one off. So did the Colts. I mean, Taylor Heineke gave them just enough of what they needed. I mean, obviously with Desmond Ritter having so many struggles, it made the most sense to go back to him. But I mean, technically they're still in the running in the NFC South. I mean, Heineke was accurate. He looked confident. He had some great plays in this game. And the Colts had a lot of mistakes. So it was just one of those games where we got to see the positive aspects of Atlanta and more of the negative aspects of Indianapolis that have been really showing up the past couple weeks.
Yeah, I was surprised by this game. Even though I picked Atlanta, I thought it was going to be hard fought and going to come down to the wire. And I was hoping that Taylor Heineke provided a spark, which he did. But I didn't see the Falcons putting up 29 points. And I definitely didn't see them winning by 19, 29-10, a statement win for Atlanta. But I was surprised by how much Gardner Minshew with Jonathan Taylor back. Michael Pittman was out, but the Colts really struggled in this game, huh?
Yeah, it was bad. I mean, you would think Jonathan Taylor's back. They start the game with a 7-0 lead. Great opening
Yeah.
drive, great touchdown. And then, I mean, Minshew just could not hit a target to save his life. He was sacked 6 times. 17 of his 37 passes were just bad throws. I mean, we had some O-line issues. Pass protection was awful in the game. And then, I mean, that pick at the end with 8 minutes left, I mean, that would have, maybe pulled them back within a score because at the time they were down 13. But I mean, you get a pass picked with 8 minutes left, down 13. I mean, that's kind of it. The defense was a hot mess too. It was just an off game for the Colts. And then the Falcons did something we haven't seen them do pretty much all season. They have finally rediscovered they have a run game,
Yeah.
which really, really took off. We saw them leaning on their running backs here, and it was really effective.
Yeah, and a name that we've been talking about all season long, Jesse Bates, was a great offseason acquisition from the Bengals. The safety records his career high sixth interception of the season, tied for the second most in the NFL with Geno Stone. With Deron Bland's got 8, Jesse Bates and Geno Stone with 6. How about Jesse Bates, man? He's been consistent and having a career season in Atlanta.
I mean, I I think we've both kind of had a feeling about him, and I've really liked seeing him getting to produce as much as he is. Somebody else that was an individual really helping out the Falcons, their kicker, Young-Hoon Koo. I mean, 5 field goals. I mean, that's almost half their points. So, over half their points, sorry. So it's nice when your special team steps up when you need them, and they just seemed like a really pulled together team for this week, which is nice because man, Atlanta's been all over the place this season.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see. They snapped their 2-game losing streak. They improved to 7-8, and they're right there with the Saints, and just a game back of the Bucks. Still a very competitive NFC South. So we'll see if Atlanta can, maybe Taylor Heineke can continue to provide a spark, but they're going to have to make up a game on Tampa Bay at some point, and that NFC South is going to be very interesting down the stretch.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of obvious to most people who have been watching who the better team is in that division. I know the records indicate that they're pretty equal at this point, but I can't see Atlanta coming out on top of that division.
All signs seem to be pointing to Tampa Bay right now, and Baker's red hot.
Oh yeah, he is playing so well right now. So I can't see Atlanta pulling out. I mean, yeah, your record's one thing and you win when it counts and that can pull off a postseason appearance, but I don't think getting there is going to do much for them.
A personal shout out for me. I was watching this game and I saw Calais Campbell doing the Dirty Bird dance. And I've been messaging on Instagram with the Dirty Bird running back Jamal Anderson. And so I was messaging him about that. And he was laughing and saying he loved it. So he's still all in on the Falcons. And a little teaser, we might be getting Jamal Anderson on the podcast a little down the road here. So keep an eye on that, Falcons fans.
Yeah, that would be great. I think he would have some great insight onto to what this team's, potential is moving forward, especially like maybe some insight on their quarterback situation.
Yeah, and he's got to be loving Bijan Robinson over there too.
Oh yeah.
And
He's
then the
fun to watch for
Colts.
non-players, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. He's a monster. For the Colts, they fall to 8-7. They're still in a three-way tie in the AFC South right now. A bad game for the Colts. Do you think they're still capable of winning this division and getting into the playoffs? Or to me, I kind of feel like they're the third favorite team here. If the Texans get CJ Stroud back here soon, I feel like Trevor Lawrence is going to get out of his slump eventually. I just don't trust the Colts, right? Do you?
No, and I've had a hard time. Like I had a hard time picking them in this game. I didn't pick like I don't trust them to beat the Falcons. There's no way in hell I'm going to trust them to win out a division that has, CJ Stroud and Trevor Lawrence. Like
Hmm.
obviously they've both been going through some of their own stuff. But CJ Stroud was back at practice today. He has one more phase of concussion protocol to clear before he's cleared to play. But all signs are pointing to him being able to play this coming week. So it looks like that return is on, and Trevor Lawrence has some stuff he's been working through in some off games, but I mean, there's no way I'm pitting the Colts up with those two.
Yeah, and it might come down to week 18, Texans at Colts, and likely CJ Stroud against Gardner Minshew. That could be a really fun, playoff type game there.
Yeah, and I'm gonna ride with the road team on that one.
Yeah, me too. um, how about Seahawks at Titans? Geno Smith back, and then Will Levis out with an ankle injury. So Ryan Tannehill back starting for the Titans. How about this game?
I mean, I can't tell the difference between Tannehill and Levis, if we're being honest. In the jersey, out of the jersey, they look the same, they play the same. Like if I hadn't known that Levis was injured, I wouldn't have noticed the difference. But I mean, speaking of not noticing the difference, Seattle has been rotating quarterbacks in and out due to injuries. And I mean, they keep coming back in games and pulling off upsets no matter who's in the quarterback position. I mean, back-to-back
Yeah,
weeks, back-to-back game-winning drives for Seattle. I mean, Smith looked like Drew Lock's last Monday night heroics. I mean, 14 play, 75-yard touchdown. I they're both clicking right now. So I think Seattle's really lucky with their quarterback situation because we have seen teams need to turn to their backup quarterback this season, and their backup has not been able to step in and pull off a win. And I mean, Geno Smith was out. They were able to rely on Drew Lock to do it. And this week, Geno was back and he pulled it off too.
yeah, a bit of a hard fought win against the Titans. But the NFL, it's always hard. It's hard to win in this league, and we say this all the time. It matters if you get the win, not how you got it done. And to come through in the clutch, I think that says a lot about the culture that Pete Carroll has built there in Seattle. That they're able to weather these storms and find a way to win big games, and they're right there in the thick of it to make the playoffs. Right there, battling with the Rams. I'm rooting for the Seahawks team.
I am too. I mean, the combination of Metcalf, Lockett, and Smith-Njigba on offense is just such a great receiving core. I mean,
Hmm.
they block for each other, they step in for each other, they know each other's roots, they're so supportive. And I mean, whichever quarterback is playing, they're connecting just as well. And I think the communication on this team is great. And on the other side of the ball, I mean, Mike Vrabel's squad, I mean, the Titans really came to play. They were, only playing for pride at this point because, their playoff dreams are gone, but they still put up a damn good fight against a team that's still in the playoff hunt. So, it was a good game, and I was honestly surprised how well Tennessee played against that Seattle offense.
Yeah, and like you said, the Seahawks needed some heroics just to get this done. And how about that DK Metcalf one-handed touchdown catch? You see that one?
Okay, so every time DK Metcalf does something amazing, it pisses me off more that Green Bay moved away from him in the draft.
He's
So,
a monster, and
oh,
we
he's
talk
so
about it all the time.
disgustingly good.
He's got the size, the strength, the catching ability, and then
And the
he's like
speed.
the speed. Yeah, he's got
Holy
no
shit, he's
flaws
fast.
to his game. Yeah.
Yeah, he is just an insane athlete all around. And it's so frustrating knowing that like your team could have had like, can you imagine if Green Bay actually had DK Metcalf, like look at our receiving core who is injured every time you look at him. I
And
mean,
it with
oh,
with Jordan Love, but imagine a couple years with Aaron Rodgers too.
I know. Okay, I don't want to talk about it anymore. Anyway, but one thing to point out, this week we saw a lot of really shoddy offensive line play. We saw quarterbacks with no time under pressure the entire game, and there were multiple games here. I'm not just talking about the 49ers having to sub in, players from different positions into their O-line, but like this offensive line for Ryan Tannehill, I mean, I know he was 18 for 26. He was under duress the entire game. I mean, he was 3 of 6 for 22 yards when he was under pressure, 6 sacks, 9 pressures, 8 quarterback hits. I mean, what do you expect your quarterback to be able to do when you can't leave him on his feet?
Hmm.
Like, you're not letting the man stay standing in the pocket long enough to get a player to find a receiver. You're not going to be able to win a game that way.
Yeah, and deep in the season like this, you're seeing it. A lot of places it's next man up, it's fill in the hole, it's try to tape, do your best to fix issues, but there's a lot of issues, a lot of holes, and a lot of offensive lines that are, shaky at this point in the season. And, uh, you know, it's like that throughout the league. These teams are just trying to limp their way into the playoffs, right?
Yeah, but some teams are doing it
Um,
better than others. I mean, it almost seems, especially with O-lines this week, I didn't I wasn't really impressed with how the replacements who have stepped in to cover injuries have played this week. It seems
yeah,
like they're kind of lackluster, and there are 4 games I could have the same conversation about this week. So I'm not singling anyone out, but I don't know what's going on with the next man up situation as far as O linemen, but very disappointed.
yeah, and speaking of this, going back to these Seahawks real quick, so there was a point where they were in a bad losing streak. They lost 4 games in a row, right in the heart of the season, weeks 11 through week 14, and everyone was like, they're out. They're not going to make the playoffs. The season's over. There's a chance here. They've won their second in a row. They play versus the Steelers and at the Cardinals to finish the season. If Seattle takes care of business, they could go into the playoffs on a 4 game winning streak. They could be just as dangerous as a lot of different teams. I mean, no one's going to want to face just like the Bills on a winning streak. No, you don't want to face anybody that's got a 4 game winning streak going into the playoffs. And the Seahawks have a lot of talent on that team.
And their coach is very familiar with the postseason. He's very
Yeah,
familiar with these comeback type of wins. I mean, Seattle's in a playoff position. They're back-to-back wins. I mean, Minnesota lost and New Orleans lost. Like, so right now they're a game up in seventh seed for the NFC. And I mean, Geno Smith has 4 game-winning drives on the season right now. He's tied for the
yeah,
most in the NFL. Like, we've seen him miss a couple games, but these games that he's playing in, he plays very well under pressure. Pulling off late wins like that, a lot of quarterbacks get in their head and end up throwing picks, as we also saw this week. Um, and you need a quarterback who can keep a cool head if you're going to make a postseason run. And Seattle might be heating up at the right time.
yeah. I would love to see it. I'm always going to root for this team. And credit to Pete Carroll and the culture they've built over there. Next man up, and they always seem to find a way to get it done. Speaking of finding a way to get it done, a team that was teetering, they had lost 2 of their last 3, lose to the Bears, lose to the Packers on Thanksgiving. The Lions were teetering on that Detroit football type collapse, and then they make that statement win against Denver on Saturday night to throw up 42 points, I believe, on the board. And then find a way to be a scrappy Vikings team, a Brian Flores defense. You've been riding with the Lions all season long. I've been picking against them, waiting for the inevitable collapse that the Lions always do, and it hasn't come. They clinched the NFC North for the first time ever, but it was a bit of a struggle to get there in this game, wasn't it?
I mean, Nick Mullins helped them as much as he could, but Justin Jefferson was on point. I mean, he had an insane catch in this
Yeah,
game. I mean,
multiple.
I He's so good. And I mean Detroit's defense, they showed up late in the game, but early in the game, I thought Minnesota was gonna take this and run away. I mean,
Hmm.
they were letting Minnesota run all over them. I felt like I was watching Green Bay's secondary for some of these possessions. Um, but I mean, Mullins had some big moments, but turning the ball over too many times. And right now, the Minnesota quarterback situation is week to week. I mean, Kirk Cousins has been out, but right now we're just bouncing back and forth. And they don't seem, I mean, Dobbs is available, Mullins is available. It just doesn't seem like they know what to do here. And I almost feel like they're just putting a pin in this season because they don't seem to have much direction with where they're trying to go right now.
No, and that's almost to be expected. The Vikings is one of the rare spots where it makes sense. You lose Kirk Cousins for the season, and you're not supposed to be any good anymore, right? And we've seen all these backups be successful, and it's like, what the hell's going on? I mean, Nick Mullins throws for 411 yards. You know, he was slinging it. He wasn't afraid, that's for sure. But
No.
four interceptions along the way. But my concern, so huge win for the Lions. I have to give them personally, I have to give them a lot of respect for clinching the North, not playing around. They could have waited till week 18 to clinch the division. They didn't. They get it done in week 16 on the road in Minnesota, get out to a 17-7 lead, actually trailed 21-17, but the defense makes a couple plays and wins 30-24. But how about, they made it more difficult on themselves too, though, by the defense they allowed a 3rd and 19 conversion right before halftime that
Hmm.
got points on the board. And they allowed a 3rd and 27 in the fourth quarter in the clutch. I mean, their defense has to step up because if you play the Rams against Stafford or whoever you play in the playoffs, you have to be able to get off the field, right?
Yeah, and I mean the defense stepped up late to take control of this game for them, but those
Hmm.
big plays, there's no reason someone should be converting a 3rd and 17, a 3rd and 20, anything. Like that
Yeah,
should be a an obvious punt on the next play. Like there shouldn't be any way that they pull that off. But I mean they did come off the two-game losing streak, and this game, they stepped up a bit. And the defense has been taking a lot of flack for that two-game losing streak. And we've seen some improvements, but they definitely have some other things they need to clear up. But I just want to take a minute. You and I had talked about the draft. We had our favorite running backs in the draft, and we have talked about Jahmyr Gibbs on and off all season. I know other people have their favorite running backs, but he's been top of our list. I mean, right now,
hmm,
the 12th overall pick for Detroit. He has more rushing yards at 872 than Travis Etienne, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs. More rushing touchdowns at 9 than Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, James Cook, and Tony Pollard. More yards per carry than any other running back in the league. All in 154 total attempts. He is
hmm.
splitting that backfield with David Montgomery when David Montgomery is in. He's a part of a 1-2 punch, and he's not getting, as much attention as a team with just like one star running back. And he still is leading the league across so many different categories. And I mean, he is having an amazing season. I know he's not really in anyone's top two for offensive rookie of the year because there are a couple other breakout stars this season. But he's having an insane year, and I feel like not enough people are giving him the credit that he is due.
Absolutely. I mean, forget the stats. If you watch the games, you see how impactful Jahmyr Gibbs is, and the defenses talk about it all the time, how they have to game plan to stop Gibbs. Like, he's so explosive in both the run and the pass. Um, and then with David Montgomery too, that might be one of the best, or it's definitely one of the best two running back combos in the league for sure. And you love to see it. You've been on Gibbs since the draft. I was a little bit like, why are you reaching to take a running back here? But Gibbs, I mean, you compare him to Bijan Robinson, it's not that big of a difference. He might be slightly better, to be honest. So
I think he has the slight edge, but it also might just be the rest of the team that's built around him. I think
yeah, their O
Detroit as a
line is
whole.
nasty. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, are you surprised that the Lions locked up the division? I know it worked out perfectly, right? Kirk Cousins goes down for the season.
Green
Aaron
Bay's a shit
Rodgers
show.
leaves Green Bay. The Bears are rebuilding. but the Lions took advantage of the opportunity and got it done, right?
I mean, I was pulling for Detroit this year. I didn't need any more of Minnesota's miracles from last year. There was enough of that. So I've been pulling for Detroit all season. I had no expectations for Green Bay, and then that other team in the division we don't even like pretend had a shot at the postseason. Um,
Whatever.
they're in a rebuild phase, and their management is a mess. That's not a jab
No,
at
that's
Chicago
true.
fans.
Yeah, that's
They
true.
need a revamp
And we got
before
Luke
I give them
Getsy at
credit.
offensive coordinator, which that's like playing with two hands tied behind your back.
But just the number of weapons Detroit has, and when their defense is playing well, it's playing really well. But I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's the fourth player in NFL history to have over 300 receptions in their first NFL seasons. Like, compare
Yeah.
that with Gibbs' numbers, and like this young team has so much talent.
Sam
And
Laporta too.
yeah, Laporta we love. Like I just I'm very happy for Detroit. This has been a long time coming. I'm glad that, other people kind of got out of the way a little bit so they could pull off a win. I mean, it wasn't the most competitive division that the NFC North has been. I mean, generally there's three or four teams, competing for a spot. This year there was kind of two, and then Kirk Cousins went down.
One and a half,
So
yeah.
1.5. So yeah, Detroit kind of stepped in there, but I'm happy they did. I mean, we've seen some, Detroit football where they still would have given the division away this season, in previous years. And I mean, Dan Campbell has really stepped in and turned this team around, and we've seen a lot of improvements. So very proud of Detroit. Minnesota, I'm intrigued to see what they do at quarterback in the last couple weeks of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And then this offseason too, right? Do they bring Kirk Cousins back or does he get moved somewhere else? We'll see what happens. I know that Kevin O'Connell is a big Kirk Cousins fan, and it's like, what other direction are you going to go? But going back to the Lions real quick, they need to, me being the hater that I am, I have to bring this up. The season's not over. The job's not done. Congrats, Lions. You won the North and you're going to host a playoff game. That alone is a huge accomplishment, and the city is going to be rocking for that playoff game. But don't have the city rocking and then lose that playoff game. I've seen it. We've seen the Lions make the playoffs before with Matthew Stafford. He had the Lions in the playoffs 3 or 4 times and never won a playoff game. It's very important for this team to take advantage of that home field for the first time in forever and use it to their advantage and get a win, right? It's going to be very deflating for to go this far in the season, to lock up the division, to host a playoff game, and then to lose that playoff game. They need to be 100% play their best brand of football come playoff time, right?
Yeah, and this is a different Detroit team than we're used to seeing. I mean, I have been rooting for them all year, and I would not do that in years past. So I think they have a way better shot this year at, actually making a postseason run and pulling off a win or two. Um, I like the narrative that the Lions go to the Super Bowl. I don't think that'll happen. However, some people have proposed a Cleveland Brown Detroit Lion Super Bowl, and
That
I am all for that. I do not think it would happen, but it would be fun to watch. So
would be crazy. I think hell will freeze over if that happens.
I agree, absolutely. But Hell, Michigan is pretty cold right now, so
Yeah, that's true. Um, some sad news for Vikings tight end TJ Hawkinson suffers a torn ACL and MCL and is out for the season and might not be ready for the start for week 1 next year.
so many ACL and Achilles injuries this year. I've lost
Yeah,
count, honestly.
yeah.
That sucks. He was great in fantasy this year too.
So the Vikings are gonna be hosting the Packers on Sunday Night Football in Week 17. Big game, and the Packers are technically. We'll talk about this more coming up, but they're technically still alive. If the Packers win out, there's a scenario where they can get the 7th seed.
Yeah, we need Seattle to lose one, the Rams to lose
Really, the
one.
Rams.
I thought
If
it
the
was
Rams lose to the Niners, because the Packers will have the tiebreaker over the Rams.
I feel like it was or. I feel like it was Seattle needed to lose one, or the Rams needed to lose one, and the
Yeah,
South needs to stay out of the way.
yeah, and it just went out. And so you're playing at Minnesota. That's a huge one, but Nick Mullins, who's the quarterback, right? So
Yeah.
can Jordan Love play his best performance in that one, get the win, and then
Let's just
versus the Bears?
let's not get too hopeful about the Packers. We'll talk about them in a minute. But
Yeah.
at least two of these things must happen. Seahawks need to lose once, the Rams need to lose once, the NFC South stay out of the way. So we need two of those, and we need to win out. So Green Bay
I don't
probably won't
see.
make the playoff, and I don't care if they do. I don't want to go to the playoffs and lose in the wild card round. I'd rather just miss the playoffs entirely.
Yeah, it'll be
All right.
interesting. How about your New York Jets and the Commanders? The best game of the weekend, right?
I mean, you called this the poop bowl going into this week. But honestly, it was a scrappy game. I mean, Brees Hall looked like rookie Brees Hall. Legatron was, rolling. I
Yeah.
mean, I read somewhere that it wouldn't be a Jets game in 2023 without spanning the full emotional spectrum within 4 quarters of football. And if that is not the most accurate thing about this game, I mean, they came out hot and then they got a little complacent and let the game go the other way, and then they came back in to, uh pull off the win. I mean, it was a very emotional game if you were a Jets fan. I didn't really care. I picked the Jets just because ew, Commanders. But yeah, it was an up and down game, and I was surprised how competitive it was.
And to me, the most glaring part about this game, and I've had my concerns about this guy going into the season. I was never a big fan. Sam Howell has now been
Mhm.
benched in back-to-back weeks. He started week 15, got benched. He started week 16, 6 of 22 and two interceptions, and is down 20 to nothing. And they bench him for Jacoby Brissett, and Brissett's the one that leads the Commanders back into this game. Uh,
Three
Washington
straight
has to be
touchdown
pretty,
drives.
yeah, Washington has to be pretty concerned about their franchise quarterback or quote unquote franchise quarterback, right?
I mean, it's a lost season for them at this point. We knew there was going to be some changes coming up with, their record being what it is, but I feel like the Sam Howell era is done. I mean,
Yeah.
they looked like a completely different team after Jacoby took over.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it wasn't like, oh, the team just doesn't have the weapons. Like, your backup came in and went on 3 straight touchdown drives.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
the problem is you. Like,
yeah, and I mean, we'll see. I mean, I don't think that I think they're gonna bring in some competition for Sam Howell and see if that elevates his game, and maybe through the competition he can earn his job and get his confidence back. But his confidence is completely gone right now, and Washington has made the switch permanent. They're gonna go with Jacoby Brissett as their starter for Week 17 and probably the rest of the season. So a very tough way for the season to end for Sam Howell.
yeah, and it's interesting because, when you see a team that's already eliminated from the playoffs switch to their backup quarterback for week 17 and week 18, it's normally to avoid injuries. At this
Yeah,
point, it's to avoid embarrassment. But
yeah,
I mean, the Jets really rallied around the whole, Aaron Rodgers is back in practice. We added him back to our roster. Obviously, he's not coming back in, but they just seem to have a good morale boost. And I mean, I don't know why they decided to wait until they were eliminated from the postseason to have such a good game. I mean, that just defense looked like they're supposed to look all season. I mean, forced 2 turnovers, turned both into points. I mean, the Jets played really well. It's just a shame that they did after their elimination.
yeah. And the Jets are a very frustrating team. I've tried
Mhm.
to will the Jets some wins earlier in the year so that we could see the Aaron Rodgers comeback, right? And they dropped the ball so many times. They put up 0 points against the Dolphins. Like they're a very frustrating team. And they've gone out and said that both the GM and the head coach are returning. So there's not going to be any massive changes, and they're going to go into next season preparing around Aaron Rodgers.
Well,
Maybe, hopefully, they learn from their lesson and get a veteran backup in there behind Aaron Rodgers because they could have saved themselves. Joe Flacco was available. I'll never
mhm.
understand why the Jets of all people, Flacco's been there before. He knows, you know, the organization. Why not bring him back? But apparently they didn't want to, and they paid the price for it.
Yeah, and another thing that's interesting is I'll be intrigued to see what plays out with, Aaron Rodgers has his, his Christmas wish list of all the people he wants to join him in New York. And obviously, that played out so well this year. Um, but he wants, who was on his list? Devontae Adams, David Bakhtiari, and there was one other person I can't remember right now. But um, what are you gonna do with
Yeah.
David Bakhtiari? Like let him warm the bench there?
Yeah, I mean, he just likes him. I mean, I agree. Bakhtiari's on his last legs for sure,
Well,
but
and I love Bakhtiari, but he needs to retire and just go into coaching. He's an amazing sideline coach for the team. He's a great veteran insight. I think he does a lot of like on-team coaching and
yeah,
mentorship, but just fucking retire already and get paid to do that instead of using up a roster spot.
yeah, like maybe sign him as a coach instead of a player. But
Exactly.
but Devontae Adams would be a hell of a get. If you're the Jets, why wouldn't you get Devontae Adams, move Garrett Wilson to wide receiver two? Suddenly
Hmm.
you've got an elite 1-2 punch at receiver.
Yeah. And Devontae's not happy anyway.
Yeah.
But he has said he misses Green Bay. So, we'll see what happens there. But, speaking of Green Bay, let's talk, the Packers, the Panthers. I obviously had picked the Packers to win, and you kind of picked the Panthers here as a hate pick, but I told you I would not be surprised. There were multiple reasons because, the Packers lose out, Joe Barry gets fired. The Packers beat the Panthers, it messes with Chicago's draft pick.
Yeah.
So I could see them losing for multiple reasons. And there's a lot of internal like tension and drama going on in Green Bay. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the stuff about Jair Alexander being suspended by the team, right?
Yeah, that was crazy. I don't like that might have been a little bit of an overreaction to suspend him, but at the same time, what are you doing, Jair? And you almost hurt the team with your recklessness there.
Okay, so LaFleur came out and said it wasn't just the coin toss. Like that's not why he was suspended. It was never just the one thing. And he has been really loudmouthed about issues with the defense and the coaching staff. And like, while I agree with him, when you're on the team, you shouldn't be out running your mouth.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, there's been some tension with him for a while, but like, if you're not the team captain and someone else is supposed to do the coin toss, what are you doing?
Yeah, he kind of took it upon himself. He said they didn't know I'm from Charlotte. He kind of even his post game interview was very like, I'm gonna do
Flippant.
what I want to do. You know, who
Yeah.
cares about the coaching staff? That my boys got my back, and it's like you're kind of asking for it at that point. Kind of a negative attitude from Jair.
Yeah, and I can understand, thinking that the team should be better and you deserve better and more wins in a postseason shot. But I mean, that attitude is not going to get you far. And then
Be a
I've seen a lot of,
professional, right? It's not always gonna go your way. Be a
Mhm.
professional at least.
And I've seen a lot of people say like, oh, why don't they just release him or trade him? The issue with doing that now is if he's released or traded before June 2nd, his contract leaves 27 million dead cap space, a
Yeah.
3.5 million loss in cap space. If we release him or trade him after June 1st, it's only an 8.4 million dead cap space hit. So we move some of that to 2025. So I think he might be parting ways in about 6 months.
Yeah, and it's tough when you're one of your highest paid players, one of your locker room leaders, one of the guys that everyone's going to kind of look up to. One of your best players is acting like that and kind of ignoring the coaching staff and doing whatever he wants. It sets a rough precedent for everybody else.
Yeah, we've had other players like that before. Martellus Bennett, was it Martellus?
Yeah, he
Um,
was doing that in Chicago too. Yeah,
yeah, just bad attitude in the locker room. Like, I don't care what you can do on the field if you're poisoning the locker room. But I
yeah.
mean, I don't know what there is to say about this game. The Panthers should have won it, but Bryce Young waited too long to spike the ball for the game tying field goal at the end. Um, the Panthers
Well,
played well. The Packers played as they do, relatively mediocre. I
at
don't,
least they got the win, and I'm too far behind to be making picks like this. But I just wanted to
it was
kind
so
of
close though.
I wanted to piss you off and pick them. Um, and it was surprise. I thought it was done. Like I stopped watching when it was 30-16, And
No.
then I see that it's tied. I'm like, what the hell? But
Oh, it was so
Green
bad.
Bay's the better team. They got the win. They didn't play their best football, but like, it doesn't matter. A win's a win. And we'll see if the Packers can get a big win at the Vikings. I mean, they're hanging by a thread. The season's about over, and it'll be interesting to see how they navigate the internal issues with Jair and with Joe Barry, and if they can find it within themselves to go into Minnesota and get a big win and keep the story alive, keep the playoff hopes alive. That's going to be a fun game to watch.
Listen, I would be all for Green Bay making a postseason run if our defense wasn't so bad. I mean, Matt LaFleur's offense put up their first 30-point game since week one. Their
Hmm.
offense is firing. That is fine. However, the defense, I mean, you talked about Detroit giving up third and longs. Carolina made Green Bay look like a bunch of high schoolers. It was so bad. Penalties were insane. I mean, the Panthers offense hadn't put up more than 20 points since week five. They hadn't had
Yeah.
any touchdowns in their past two games. They marched all over Green Bay. I mean, they gave up 394 yards, 26 first downs, and 6.5 yards per play, not per play. That's insane. Like they shouldn't have won that. Like if the offense wasn't on point, I mean, Carolina should have won this game, honestly. I mean, Jordan Love had a good game, 109 passer rating, 219 passing yards. I mean, he's had 100 plus passer rating in five of his last six games, but you can't win games when your defense doesn't stop the other team from scoring.
Yeah, it's going to be tough with that defense. And to their credit, the Panthers have been playing better since DJ Chark got back, and he goes for two touchdowns in this game. But yeah, Green Bay's defense is bad. And the only positive I can see is that it does help Jordan Love's development to win important games late in the year and give him a playoff start.
Yeah.
That's huge too. So you're likely gonna, even if you do make the playoffs, likely gonna lose right away. But I mean, it'd be fun. It'd be something to watch, right? Get to see your Packers play in the playoffs.
Yeah, I just worry that a postseason appearance helps Joe Barry keep his job.
Yeah, you're like me, where it's like, don't win too much because we want this coach out of here. I want Eberflus out, but the Bears keep winning.
Like Green Bay's defense has been a problem for a long time.
Yeah.
But speaking of defenses that are not a problem, I'd like to look on the other side of things. Let's talk the Browns at the Texans. I mean, 36-22. You and I both knew the Browns would come into this one and win. We are very much on the Flacco is back train.
Yeah.
And CJ Stroud was out of this one, so we weren't expecting the Texans to be able to pull off an upset win here. He's back at practice today, though, so things are looking up for Houston. But Joe Flacco and Amari Cooper, could you have asked for a better connection on Christmas?
It's crazy. And Amari Cooper has to be so happy. I mean, there's like built-in chemistry there. And to break the franchise record with 265 receiving yards passes Josh Gordon from 2013. And that was an incredible season from Josh Gordon. I mean, Flacco comes in, and not only is he winning, but he's throwing for a ton of yards. And now they're breaking franchise records with Amari Cooper. Like, the Browns are legit. Like, this isn't a good
Mhm.
story anymore. This is scary a little bit. And the Browns might be one of those teams that takes a winning streak. They're on a 3-game winning streak. Imagine if they go take a 5-game winning streak, go in at 12-5, and they're going to be a road team, and ain't nobody want to face the Browns, uh, you know, in the first round. Like that's going to be. Imagine if it's Jags Browns. Like the Browns might be favored in that game.
I mean, I could see that with how well things have been going for the Jags. I would
Hmm.
honestly be surprised if they're not favored. Um,
Yeah.
One thing that is important to kind of keep an eye on with the Browns, they've had a lot of injuries on special teams.
Hmm.
Um,
Justin
so,
Hopkins or
yeah.
kicker. Yeah. Uh,
Um,
but
there, I mean,
yeah,
it was a hamstring, right? He was chasing down Damian Pierce on
yeah,
the 98-yard kick return touchdown when that happened. So Hopkins was ruled out. They're forced to go for it on every fourth down, but all of
they
the
still did
rest are,
pretty well.
yeah, yeah, it handled pretty well. And honestly, this game didn't seem as close as the score would indicate. Like it seemed like a blowout. I know it's only a 2 point or 2 score game looking at the score, but it seemed a bit further than that. Um, but I don't know what the plan is at kicker there because all of the good veteran kickers have already been picked up by somebody else.
Call up Robbie Gold, tell him to unretire.
I mean, Mason Crosby just we'll talk about him in a minute. But he would have been a great fit for this team, and I would have loved to see Mason Crosby in a Browns uniform.
Yeah. I think
Um,
Hopkins will be back though. Like a hamstring
yeah, but
injury,
when?
even if he misses, rest him for the rest of the regular season as long as
Okay.
he's good to go come playoffs.
Because I mean, think of how those kickers swing their legs when they kick. Like a hamstring for like a running back or a quarterback, like not nearly as big of a deal, but for a kicker, like those guys about do the splits when they go to kick. Like a hammy for them has got to be a completely different injury than someone not in that position.
Yeah, and they say rest is most important. So
hmm
you know,
Um, but yeah, we'll let you guys know how that plays out. We'll keep an eye on updates from that. But Joe Flacco joined Josh McCown in 2015 as the only Browns quarterbacks to have 300 plus yards in three straight games. So Flacco is doing his thing, and I'm stoked to see how that continues.
yeah, I thought you were about to say Flacco is backo again.
No,
Uh,
just once per podcast, but you said it for me, so we good. Oh, also, Hugh, if you're listening, your new shirt that says Flacco's Backo shipped 2 days ago, so expect it, anytime now.
Hell yeah, yeah, I'm sure he was excited for that one, and I mean, he should take joy in this as his, Flacco's quarterback coach early on in his career in Baltimore. And if you're Cleveland, you have to be, or a Browns fan, you have to be excited about this. I mean, this isn't just a great story. This isn't just a 38-year-old quarterback. This is a former Super Bowl MVP, and he's never been the most talented quarterback in the league, but he's shown the ability to play his best football in the biggest games. If you remember that playoff run when they won the Super Bowl, he threw for 11 touchdowns and no interceptions. Was the best quarterback in that playoff run and beat Peyton Manning and Tom Brady head to head. And I mean, with the number one defense in football and the weapons that they have, there's no reason why this Browns team can't win at least one playoff game and get to the divisional round, and then we'll see. All bets are off. I mean, imagine a Browns Ravens playoff game. Like, how much fun would that be?
I mean, we've seen that matchup, and I mean these great defenses against these insane offenses. I would love to see that.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for the AFC postseason matchups. I think it's going to be very illuminating.
Yeah, and it's very wide open, right? And if you remember, again, another stat on that, when the Ravens did win the Super Bowl with Flacco, they had the number one defense in football. Well, here it is again, the number one D in football, you know?
Yeah, and that was the year Ray Lewis retired. So that was kind of
Yeah,
the last year for that defense.
yeah.
And they came into the season knowing like, hey, this is going to be our last run with him. Let's do it. Let's get it done. And they did it. And
And
Flacco's
now is the story. Let's do it for Flacco, right? This could be Flacco's last year. He's old. He's not going to play very many more years. You have to imagine if Flacco wins a Super Bowl, wins maybe Super Bowl MVP, he's going to call it, right? What a storybook ending to a career. That's
Yeah, that would
Elway.
be amazing. Yeah, I would love that for him.
Yeah.
But I mean, we could talk about how much we love Flacco for a while, but let's move on to my other favorite quarterback in the league right now. Um, Jags at Bucks. You picked the Jags here. I knew you were going to be absolutely wrong on this one, and like you said, you were trying to make up picks here. But man, Baker Mayfield is just balling this year. Like you can argue, you can talk shit about my picks all you want, but I mean, he had that. As I said in my prediction, you're not going to come off a perfect passer rating for the first time ever in history for a visiting quarterback at Lambeau Field and, throw a four interception game. There was no way they were going to fall off that much. I mean, that was another amazing game for Baker Mayfield. I mean, he broke one of the sacks that he escaped and then ran. Like, I was completely amazed by some of the athleticism we saw out of Baker this week. And I mean, he was stiff arming, he was running through traffic, lowering shoulders. Like he was determined to make up some yards here, and it definitely created an environment where his team was just not giving up any yard anywhere on the field.
Yeah, and like we've been saying for multiple teams here, this is a Bucks team that everyone counted out. They were 4-7, and the only reason anybody still thought they had a shot was because it was a bad division. And this team is on a 4-game winning streak. And we've been waiting all season long saying, hey, someone run away with this division. This division's been wide open all year. Someone take it by the reins and run away with this division. And Tampa Bay seems like they might do it. Baker is playing out of his mind. They're on a 4-game winning streak, and they can finish the season on a 6-game winning streak and then host a playoff game. And they've got talent on both sides of the ball, and Baker's playing some of the best football of his career. Another team nobody wants to face in the playoffs, right? I mean, I could see this team at least winning a playoff game, if not more.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're heating up at the right time. I mean, Rashad White had an amazing game too. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Mike Evans and Baker's connection is always good, but it
Yeah.
seems to be getting better. I mean, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are the perfect 1-2 punch at receiving for Baker. Great targets, they know how to get open. But he has a lot of like great veteran offensive talent to kind of back him up. But I mean, let's talk about the other side of the ball. You have been a
Starting,
fan of the Jags all season.
yeah,
But I mean, 4 straight games that they've lost now. Sunday was their worst defeat since San Francisco back in week 10. Trevor Lawrence has another injury.
yeah,
His throwing shoulder. I mean, if what would his body map look like if you look at all his injuries at this point? Like he is just so injury prone.
yeah. It's starting to add up. And on top of that, he played really poorly in this game. And I wonder if he was hurt early on or what,
Mhm.
because, he has 3 turnovers and in crucial times, and it wasn't a competitive game. We're watching this game, and I'm just waiting for Trevor Lawrence and the Jags to do something, and they couldn't do it. And then you had Antoine Winfield Jr. and Devin White taking the ball away. Uh, we keep waiting for this Jags team to be like, all right, enough is enough, and we're gonna take the step and win their division. And they keep it's like it's turning into the NFC South over there in the AFC South. Like nobody wants it. All 3 teams lost this week, and the Jags are supposed to be the best team over there, and they're struggling. And now Lawrence is hurt again. Now he's the modern day Brett Favre. He's not going to miss a start. He's going to play through it again, and we'll see if he can get through it. I mean, we talk about those get right games against the Panthers. Well, here it is. Jags at home against the Panthers in week 17. It's now or never, Jacksonville. If you lose at home to Carolina, kiss the playoffs goodbye. But they should be able to win this one.
Yeah, and I mean, you keep defending Trevor Lawrence to, the media, and I have said for weeks on end now, it is respectable to try to play through an injury, but if you're
Yeah.
playing through injuries and, nursing a certain part of your body and then getting injured more, like just take a break. If you need a break, sit the game out. Because obviously him playing through injuries isn't working for the past 4 weeks. Like
Well,
it's time
but
to pull him out and let him fully recover from these injuries.
they can't afford to do that though. It's too late in the season, and CJ Beathard is not winning you any games.
No, but I
Uh,
mean, they've lost 4 straight now. Like, what if they
Beth,
lost 2 straight?
you
And
you you bench. I get it. You want to get Trevor Lawrence healthy, but if you start CJ Beathard, you're conceding that game pretty much.
well, they should have done that 2 weeks ago and let him heal from those injuries before he got re-injured again. Now it's too late. Obviously, they can't do it now. But I
Yeah.
mean, week 12 was the time to like, all right, let's pull him out for a week or two and let him heal, and then we'll make a late season run. Now it's too late.
And I think pride didn't let it. Like I think they left it up to Trevor Lawrence, and his pride said, "No, I'm not gonna sit it out." He's got that Brett Favre mentality.
Hmm.
He's never missed a start in his NFL career, and he said, "I'm not gonna start now."
I know.
So
It
maybe
just
that was
sucks
a
to see
detriment.
him getting hurt more. Like
Yeah,
playing through
but
injuries and having these damages to your body, it's going to add up and it's going to be bad one of these times.
Yeah, and for Jacksonville's sake, hopefully he can get healthy in time for the playoffs because they're going to need him to be. But they can hand the ball off all game and kind of rest Trevor Lawrence and beat the Panthers, I think. So, maybe that's what they do. And then they're at the Titans, another winnable game. So if they can finish, snap this 4-game losing streak and take some positive momentum and a 2-game winning streak into a home playoff game, then maybe they can turn this around. But right now, it's looking tough.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what they're going to do here. I'll be intrigued to see how it plays out. But let's
I'm
talk
not.
about your.
I
Okay.
haven't given up hope on this Jags team yet, though. That's my point. I know it was
Yeah.
bad on Sunday, but I think they'll turn it around against two bad teams in time to host a playoff game, and I give them as good a shot as anybody to win a playoff game, although it might be Browns at Jags, and that's a tough ask against the number one defense and Joe Flacco.
Yeah, I mean, I know you say you haven't given up on them, and that division is still in a three-way tie, so technically they're still atop the division. But you've had faith in them, having their comeback game for the past month every week.
Yeah,
And I don't
it's
think
been a
it's
rough month for sure,
it's,
but
it's been a rough month. So we'll see how this next one plays out for them. But let's
I'm
talk
going down
about.
with the ship. Yeah.
I see that. But I mean, at least they have the Panthers. But let's talk about, huge playoff implications, the Cardinals and the Bears. Um, yeah, I mean, obviously this one was interesting. I mean, Chicago played really well, honestly. They scored three straight touchdowns in the first half, um, forced three straight punts, taking a 21-0 lead less than 22 minutes into the game. And then they let off the brakes a little bit. The Cardinals made it a one-score game with 6 minutes left. Cole Kmet had a great first half, left with an injury, didn't come back in. DJ Moore left with a first half injury. Justin Fields had a rough second half, but they pulled off a win. And I mean, Fields was running really well. He ran for 97 yards.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are nitpicking Fields, and I'm in a tough
Oh
situation with the
no,
Bears
I
right
like
now.
him. I
Huh?
wish people would get off Fields nuts. I think he's a solid player who just needs a team built around him and more weapons. I mean, you
Well,
put
because
Fields.
a lot of people, especially Bears fans, are pushing for the narrative. They want Caleb Williams. They want a restart. They're trying, and there's people that have been pushing since the Bears drafted Fields that he was the wrong pick, that he wasn't a guy. And there's been some toxic Fields fans as well that are like, if you don't root for Justin Fields, then you're a racist and blah blah
Oh
blah.
my God.
Bears fandom has been a pretty toxic environment uh, for a
I mean,
while now, going back to Mitch Trubisky.
I have issues with some Bears fans. Some NFC North fans tend to be old school and just really opinionated and stupid sometimes about football.
Yeah,
But I mean, look at this game. His best two receivers left the game. And he and Khalil Herbert were like, all right, let's split it up then. Fields ran 9 times for 97 yards and got a touchdown. Khalil Herbert, 112 yards and a
yeah,
touchdown. Like he stepped in and did, like he was the MVP of this game. Like your quarterback who threw a pretty solid game and got you guys up 21-0, 22 minutes into the game, ran 97 yards in the second half to like pull back ahead. Like I hate when people blame everything on the quarterback and just kind of scapegoat them for things. We saw it with Baker Mayfield in Cleveland. I mean, Chicago Bears fans need to give Fields the credit he is due because that boy is playing his heart out and he is playing so well actually. With what he has and what that team's defense allows. I mean, yeah,
yeah.
way
Did
more
you
credit is
see?
due to Justin Fields.
Did you see that GIF of it's like a Ferrari with like a horse and buggy
The
wheels
Amish
on
wheels. Yeah.
it? Yeah. That's what they're saying. Like Luke Getsy, that's Fields and Luke Getsy's offense. And
Yeah. He is
and
wasted there.
before Luke Getsy, Fields had Matt Nagy as an offensive coordinator. I think
Poor
he's been in
child.
a shit situation with shit play calling and hasn't had reliable weapons until DJ Moore this year. And I feel like let's give Fields Jim Harbaugh or even if it's not Harbaugh, a serviceable offensive play caller and
Mhm.
draft Marvin Harrison Jr. And suddenly you've got Marvin Harrison and DJ Moore And now we can fully judge Justin Fields based on that environment
Yeah,
compared to what it is now.
and Cole Kmet is solid. I think he would be a
Yeah,
great WR3. Like
but if you
maybe not one or two, but I think he would be a great supplemental receiver. And I'm a little bitter because he was on my fantasy team this year. So there's some personal issues there. We're in a bit of a spat, but he likes to only put up more than 25 points when he's benched. But anyway. But I do think that they could easily build around him and support him. And it's the Chicago way to talk shit about the quarterback and try to get rid of him. On the other
yeah,
side of the ball, Arizona, their defense has now allowed over 400 yards in four of their past five games. Um, so Arizona is a dumpster fire. They continue to be a dumpster fire. I don't even know what else there is to say about them.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, the Cardinals suck. I mean, I'm torn because I'm rooting for the Bears to lose, but I want Justin Fields to look great doing it. And
Perfect.
because I don't want Eberflus back. I think he might be a decent defensive coordinator, but he's a terrible head coach. And I want Luke Getsy fired. And if I had my way, I'd fire Ryan Poles as well. But the Bears are unlikely to do that. Um, but I thought Fields played pretty well. I think he's played pretty well since coming back from the injury. He hasn't been perfect, but he's been pretty damn good. And his running threat with his legs is
Mhm.
always a factor. And we've seen so many times where most quarterbacks would get sacked behind a bad O line, and he just escapes it and shrugs off a tackle and then goes for 30 yards. And so I'm not done with Justin Fields. I hope the Bears keep him and build around him. And, if they don't, I mean, to be honest, my Bears fandom is hanging by a thread.
Mhm.
I'm barely a Bears fan anymore. Like, Justin Fields is what is keeping me there. And
Yeah,
if
I mean,
they do the right moves and bring in Harbaugh, bring in Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors or whatever and build around Fields, then I'm fully on board. But if you move on from Fields, I might be moving on along with it. You've already moved on from Roquan Smith, who was my favorite Bear. If you move on from Fields too, why am I going to give a shit about the Bears going forward? You know what I mean?
yeah, but I mean, moving on from Justin Fields, like think of the teams who would kill for a running back who averaged almost 11 yards per carry.
Yeah,
Like that's amazing. And I mean, if you need a new Bears player to root for, I know you've loved Robbie Gould, but Cairo Santos is perfect at home this season, 13 of 13 on
I love
field
Cairo
goals.
Santos, but it's not enough to keep me on the on the
Well,
on the team.
that was kind of a joke, but yes. So let's talk about another game here. We had the 10-4 Cowboys at the 10-4 Dolphins, and I mean, this one was a great defensive grind back and forth. Miami kind of shut up some haters here with this one with a 22-20 win. How did you feel about this game?
I mean, we were excited about this game going into it, and I was kind of bold picking the Cowboys here to go into Miami and get this win. And in typical Cowboy fashion, they blew it. And the most
Hmm.
surprising aspect is Dak Prescott came through in the clutch. I was watching this game closely, rooting for the Cowboys, which is a weird position to find
Oh,
myself in.
yeah, we were messaging about that, guys. Alex and I rooting for the Cowboys is so weird. And we said that multiple times. I was
Yeah,
like, this feels dirty. Like I feel like I'm cheating on the Packers or something. And Dak Prescott was so clutch in this game. He has been over this entire season really pulling together like these fourth quarter drives to kind of keep their team in and keep them ahead. And then the defense lets them down in
yeah.
this one. And it was aggravating. And I'm sure Dallas fans agree with us. I mean, when your offense is really trying to do everything they can here, and then your defense just lets Tua and Tyreek run all over you in the fourth quarter, I mean, that's really messed up. And it's really hard to not get pissed off after that.
Yeah, it was very frustrating to see multiple third downs where the Cowboys, if they just make a stop, you either put the Dolphins in a fourth down that they must convert, or you force a long field goal and then you might get the ball back with time still left on the clock. And multiple times they kept allowing first downs until the Dolphins were able to run the clock down and kick the game-winning field goal, and it's over. We expect more from this Cowboys defense than they showed at the end of this game. And the Cowboys. they're going to make the playoffs, but unless they play better, they need to play complete games, and they just haven't been able to do it. And we'll see if they can turn it around. They got a home game against the Lions on Saturday night, which I'm gonna find myself once again rooting for the Cowboys. I think they win this one. They play much better at home.
I'm gonna say the
The
road is
Cowboys,
their issue. The Cowboys need
yeah,
home field advantage because on the road they are not doing well.
but the issue is that they've now blown their chance to probably win the division, and the Eagles are likely going to win the division now, and so you're in a spot where you're going to be playing on the road in the playoffs, and these Cowboys teams have had such great teams for consecutive years, yet they make the playoffs and they lose right away. And I think that's what we're looking at again this year.
Yeah, I mean, if you can only win at home, you better win home field advantage.
Yeah, and a huge win for the Dolphins, a statement win for them as well. But I'm not sold on this Dolphins team
I'm
yet
not
either.
either. I'm not.
And
And I know this should have been their statement win, and we should be, believing in stuff. But we have seen them play up to good opponents and play down to bad ones, and I don't trust them.
I think they get their ass kicked next week. They're going to Baltimore. I don't think that's going to be a close game. I got the Ravens by double digits.
Hmm.
And then they're playing the Bills. And tell me who's a hotter team in football right now than the Buffalo Bills. I could easily see Buffalo going into Miami and stealing that win. That's going to be a must watch week 18 game.
Oddly enough, I have more faith in the Bills than I do in the other matchup, which is
Yeah.
strange.
Oh,
But
the Ravens?
yeah, like I mean, the Ravens are the hottest team in football right now, right?
You're
But
not good. We're going to talk about this a little bit. You're not where I'm at with this Ravens team. I don't think you're giving them enough credit for that Niners ass kicking.
no, 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 I am. I'm just saying I have more faith in the Bills right now.
You're a Bills fan, is what you
I
are.
am a
That's
Bills
what it
fan,
is.
but just the wins they've pulled off, like
Yeah.
the Ravens are favored. The Ravens are, top one, top two, top three best teams in the NFL. But the Bills are not being given a lot of credit, and they're still pulling off some amazing wins. So
No,
I'm
no.
just saying, as far as beating Miami, I have more faith in the Bills. I'm not saying I have more faith in the Bills winning the Super Bowl because no, it's the Ravens. But
Well,
just
I,
beating
I mean the
Miami.
Bills, especially if they go in hot. Imagine if the Bills steal the AFC East. That's going to be a statement way to end the season.
Hmm.
If they go in hot like that, and then they're hosting playoff games, I give the Bills in a wide open AFC as good of a shot as anybody to go to the Super Bowl. I really do.
Well, most of the reason I said I have more faith in the Bills beating Miami is because those divisional games tend to be real scrappy and they know each other really well. I'm not saying I doubt the Ravens as a whole, but as far as,
Yeah,
you know, beating Miami or beating Miami by more points, I'm going to give it to the divisional team who's red
yeah.
hot right now. That's all I'm saying. I fully believe in the Ravens.
Well,
We'll
and
get
I
to them in a
think
minute though.
And I think this goes to our distrust of Miami. We could easily see them losing two in a row going into the playoffs, and they might choke the division. So the Dolphins still have a lot left to prove.
Yeah, I mean, they just lost to the Titans 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
Like I'm still confused by that.
yep,
And I know everybody has an off week and stuff, but I mean, and then the Chiefs a few weeks before that, the Chiefs are a hot mess. And then the Bills already blew them out by 28 points.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
I just whatever. We will circle back to that when we make our picks for next week. But let's talk, this Patriots at Broncos game. I said on last podcast, you can quote me, you can go find the audio. I went back and listened to it myself. I said, I'm gonna pick the Broncos, but I know that they're gonna lose to the Patriots just because I picked them, because every time I pick the Mitch ass Broncos, they lose just to spite me. And I knew it was gonna play out, and it played out exactly like I said.
Well, that's a hell of a call, and I mean, you knew you were gonna lose, so
I knew I was, but if I had said that I was picking the Patriots, the Broncos would have won.
I,
Like I just know how it's gonna go, and you accuse me of using my dark magic against myself. But yeah,
I
I mean that.
gotta, I'm gonna start figuring these things out, and then I'm gonna catch you in the picks by
I told you
knowing
the pick. I
that if you
literally
pick
made
the
my pick, and I said
Broncos, yeah.
I made my pick, and I said I'm picking the Broncos, but the Patriots are gonna beat them because I picked them. The Broncos do me wrong every week in my picks, and I'm so sick of them. If I pick
Well,
against them, they win. If I pick them, whatever. But you should have known. It was a pretty hilarious game. With what everyone expected this game to be going in. Like everyone expected the Broncos were gonna have a blowout. It was gonna be Russell Wilson's, big comeback game. It was gonna be great. Easy win over the Patriots. I mean, Bailey Zappi kicked their butts. Like, yeah, no.
self-inflicted issues for Denver too.
Mhm.
And you can't. And my biggest takeaway from this game, right? The Broncos hurt themselves and got themselves in a down big. And Russell Wilson, of all people, and we'll talk about Russell Wilson here coming up, but he was clutch. He was vintage Seattle
Mhm.
Seahawks Russell Wilson, and brought him back to tie this game. And if you remember, what did the Broncos do on the opening drive of the game? When they strip sacked Bailey Zappi and were in position to score, and Sean Payton, he's supposed to be smart. He's supposed to be this great head coach. Why are you insisting on a touchdown on the opening possession of the game against a Patriots team that isn't going to throw up a ton of points, kick the field goal,
Mm.
go up 3-0, and guess what? You lost by 3 points. So
You
that
know,
opening drive turnover on downs is what ended up costing you in the end, Sean Payton.
and we see this all the time with these teams who are so focused on the analytics and going for it on fourth down, losing by 1, 2, 3 points on
Yeah,
games where they turned over on downs instead of taking a field goal because they were
yeah.
going for it on 4th and 3, 4th and 4. And I'm kind of glad this keeps happening because maybe people will start correcting it. But I mean, we saw, vintage Russ. I've seen this movie before, a comeback attempt. It looked like it was gonna, work out for them. But a shout out to Christian Barmore, a
Mm-hmm.
career day on that Patriots defense. I mean, 3 sacks against Russell. He was tormenting him. I mean, 8 tackles, 4 quarterback hits, 2 tackles for loss, a forced fumble. I mean, that Patriots D sacked him 5 times, 9 QB hits. Russell Wilson was getting beat up. And this is another one of those games where I have some concerns about that O-line. And I mean, the Broncos are clinging to a thread out of for the playoffs at this point. And I mean, Russ was spreading the ball around, but you really can't do much when your O-line won't hold and your defense won't do their job.
No, exactly. The O line was getting Russ was running for his life, having to create magic the entire game, and you're not going to play perfectly when you're running for your life and have to make chicken salad out of chicken shit. And then on top of that, the defense was the reason they were winning all those games. And in back-to-back weeks, that defense has allowed 42 points to the Lions and 26 to the Bailey Zappi-led Patriots. I mean, you're asking for trouble when you're doing that. And to make Russell Wilson the fall guy
Mm-hmm.
does not make any sense to me, especially when we saw vintage Russ. And it's not like Russ has been terrible this year. I mean, Russell Wilson is top 10 in passing touchdowns, completion percentage, and he's leading the NFL, tied for the NFL lead in game-winning drives. So
So for our
why?
listeners who aren't up on this, breaking news kind of came out today. The Broncos have decided to bench Russell Wilson for the remainder of the season for Jarrett Stidham. I
Yeah,
don't know how to say his name. Um,
sit him, yeah.
and they're saying that he's known about this for a while and they had a talk. Apparently, they approached him 2 days after their win over the Chiefs a few weeks back and told him he would be made inactive for the rest of the season if he did not adjust his contract. The threat shocked him, and the two sides got into a major dispute on how to proceed. And now he's been benched for the rest of the season. The issue is they owe him 39 million fully guaranteed next year for 2024. Another 37 million in 2025 is guaranteed for injury only until the fifth day of the 2024 league year, which means his 2025 contract vests in March. And there's a no trade clause in his contract. So basically, they release him in March and he can sign with whoever he wants, or he
Yep.
waives his no trade contract and they get to decide where he goes. So
They're
if you
going.
arrest here, you're just waiting till March and then getting to kind of choose where you go on your own.
Yep, they're gonna release him in March. Um, Before his 2025 salary becomes fully guaranteed, they'll release him. Um, and this, we didn't know like when this officially broke, and they were saying, well, they're doing it because of his, they're pretty much out of the playoffs, and if he gets hurt, then his injury guarantee kicks in. And so, okay, that kind of made some sense. But once everything kind of figured out, it's like, this is it. They're done.
Yeah.
There's no bringing Russell Wilson back. And this is crazy. And if you're a Broncos fan, answer me this. What's the plan here? Who are you going to go out there and bring on that's an upgrade? Russell Wilson's been damn good this year, and I don't understand making him the fall guy here. I maybe him and Sean Payton don't see eye to eye and aren't a great fit
It
scheme
feels
wise
like a
and
culture
whatever.
issue.
Yeah, but football wise, who are you gonna bring in that's better?
Like you're a 500 team, your draft pick isn't that good. Like who do you think you're gonna pull?
I mean, maybe they make a trade for someone like Kirk Cousins, but is that an upgrade? Is it?
Is Minnesota gonna trade Russell Wilson for Kirk Cousins? Why?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know where you go from here, but I don't see this. Sean Payton made it clear that it's a football move and they're trying to win. And it's like, I don't see moving on from Russell Wilson as being trying to win.
Conducive.
I don't.
Yeah. I don't think see it's conducive to winning more games. A couple interesting locations for him to end up. Tennessee or Atlanta seem to be kind of the best fit from what we've seen this season.
Also, Raiders.
Mhm. But
That
I
could be
don't
a
want
good
him to
fit.
go there and be put through the same rigmarole that Derek Carr just went through. I just
Yeah, but
I
with
don't trust.
Antonio Pierce as head coach, it's a more stable. And then
Well,
he gets to play against the Broncos and Sean Payton 2 times a year.
we have yet to see Antonio Pierce become the full-time head coach. When that happens, I will
Yeah,
change what I have to say on them, but
he
I don't trust the organization to make
they
intelligent
better.
decisions.
They better keep him long term at this point. Otherwise, Max Crosby and Josh Jacobs are going to be like, trade me.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
Devontae already wants out.
well, but
And,
we've seen them make a lot of bad decisions from the top down, so I mean, it
and,
would be the Vegas way, the Raiders
and
way to not
if
keep
you
him.
if you bring in Russell Wilson, is that something that might keep Devontae Adams? There's something to look at too if you're the Raiders.
Absolutely would be. All right.
Yeah.
So speaking of the Raiders, let's, talk about that game. Raiders pull off a win at the Chiefs. The Chiefs are falling apart. That Raiders defense scored two defensive touchdowns within 7 seconds.
This this was my favorite game of the weekend, by the way. Christmas morning, I wake up, I'm in a good mood, eating good food, hanging out with family, and this is what I get to witness. Patrick Mahomes throwing pick sixes, Travis Kelce dropping the ball in front of his girlfriend, and the Raiders kicking the Chiefs' ass in Arrowhead. Merry Christmas.
Oh, it was a great game. And we won't talk too much about this one because we've seen the Chiefs falling apart. We're gonna say the same things we always say. They got off to a bad start, they couldn't recover, they pulled the game together in the second half, but didn't do enough. This is what happens every week with the Chiefs over the past month.
This,
Their
I got
receivers and tight ends can't catch the ball. What else is new?
so I do have a little bit to say here. Does Patrick Mahomes suck now?
Hmm.
Because from the very kickoff of this game, dropping the ball, fumbles, that pick six was terrible. Some
Hmm.
of these drops, Mahomes was throwing it behind people. I
Yeah.
mean, he's running for his life a little bit. I understand that, and he can still make magic happen. But do we trust this Chiefs team this year in the playoffs? That's what I'm
No.
asking. And real quick, a lot of flack has been given to Valdez Scantling, rightfully so. Kadarius
Yeah.
Toney, rightfully so.
Are you gonna say
Travis
the Travis Kelce
Kelsey
thing? Yeah.
has
Get
the
it.
second most drops on the team at 7. Hasn't had has only had two 100-yard receiving games this year, and hasn't scored a touchdown since week 11.
I thought he had the same number of drops as Kadarius Toney.
No, based on the stat that I looked up, Rashee Rice actually leads the team in drops.
Yeah.
Travis Kelce's second at 7. Maybe
Okay.
Kadarius Toney has 7 too.
I was gonna say I thought they were tied. Maybe he has more now after this game, but everyone is hating on the wrong people on this team, and it's
Yeah.
so funny because they're all over social media and commercials. I mean, you cannot avoid a Patrick Mahomes commercial or a Travis Kelce commercial, and it just
Yeah.
seems like their focus has been so split between football and the other stuff they're doing. And I mean, maybe they're just in it for the limelight now,
They
and.
seem distracted, and you see Kelsey and Mahomes blowing up on the sideline now. It's like a weekly routine.
Mhm. Um, I I'm not super into conspiracy theories sometimes regarding football. However, my new favorite one is Taylor Swift, known Eagles fan, was a little butthurt after the Super Bowl last year and decided that she would infiltrate the Chiefs facilities by, Trojan horsing herself into a relationship with one of the players to slowly tear them apart from within.
Hey, I mean, that would be awesome. And
I mean, that would
Brittany
be such a
Mahomes is
hilarious
probably
thing to do.
Brittany Mahomes is probably in on it too. I mean, I love seeing this front to me a front running Chiefs team who has been crybabies and whiners for a while now. Always, and the NFL constantly bail them out with calls. I love seeing it come back on them. And did you see that Jack Jones pick six where he's staring at Mahomes the
Hmm.
entire way?
Yeah, he ran right past him, just staring him down for like
I
15
loved
yards.
it.
It
I
was
love
beautiful.
that.
Yeah, and
That's my
listen,
favorite moment of the season.
and guys, we don't hate on players or people just because, the media tells us to. But when you throw temper tantrums about
Yeah,
refereeing, when you have historically gotten passes your way and you make a big deal and have to backtrack your statements because you just ran your mouth too much, like, no, mm-mm.
well,
It's
and
it's
the
hard to continue
national
to respect those players.
the national media has been part of it too. Remember when we hated the Patriots in their prime when they were winning the Super Bowls every year? The national media plays a part in this too. And
Yeah,
Shannon
trying to
Sharp
force
and
feed us.
yeah, Shannon Sharp and Nick Wright 3 years ago talking about how the Chiefs were going to three-peat and how that was an expected thing. And I'm like, that's never happened in the history of football. Get the hell out of here. And like, I am just happy to see it, especially with all the calls that have gone their way. I'm enjoying this, and the Chiefs are now 9-6, 3-5 in their last eight, and likely to have to play on the road in the playoffs. Now they're going to be a tough out in the playoffs. I mean, Mahomes, Kelsey, Andy Reid, they're going to be tough to beat. Chris Jones, but it's a harder road now than it's ever been before, and I'm rooting against it. And they're fun to hate on. They're a great team. They're fun to watch. They're fun to hate on too.
Well, it's a shame that, the Raiders have a weird quarterback situation. And yes, they seem to be pulling together under Antonio Pierce, but I don't see them taking the division from the Chiefs. And then Denver just, fell apart this week entirely. I mean,
Yeah,
you lose to the Patriots and then bench Russell Wilson, like your season's done. Unfortunately, no one is gonna, try to snatch the division from them, even though there's a 2 game difference. Like
yeah.
they could still lose the division if either one of the other teams wants to step up, but it doesn't seem like they want to. So unfortunately, I think that that story's kind of wrapped up. But speaking of wrapping up, guys, we've been talking your ears off, so we're gonna move on to the next game. And
shout
I kind of want to walk.
shout out Antonio Pierce. He's doing a hell of a job. I hope he
He's
gets
doing
that.
so well.
Yeah,
I absolutely. We are with the players and the people who are petitioning to keep him around because I think he has completely turned around. Even just like the locker room mentality and the
yeah. They love
environment.
him, and he was
They
emotional after that win on Christmas. It was awesome to see.
Yeah. But let's move on to the Giants at Eagles. This one went kind of as expected, I guess. I mean, the Eagles won. However, the
Yeah,
Giants played a really good game.
yeah. The Giants fought hard. Shocking to see they benched Tommy DeVito, go with Tyrod Taylor, and he kind of brings them back into this game. We don't have to
I mean,
talk about this game a lot, but I think we're still seeing some issues with the Eagles, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and I mean, we knew the DeVito craze would end at some point. Saquon Barkley kind of, did what he could to pull off the win here. Tyrod Taylor came in, didn't make a huge impression for most of the half. He and Darius Slayton did connect for a beautiful 69-yard completion. Brought the Giants within a score of the lead after the, Eagles had coming hot into the game. But they were within a score within 6 minutes left. Giants had a chance to extend, and then, the Hail Mary kind of didn't work there. But Giants making a quarterback switch with 2 games left, so they're obviously, trying to work out the kinks before the season's over. Um,
Yeah, that's going to be the big offseason story for the Giants is figuring out their quarterback situation. Daniel Jones appears to not be it. Tommy DeVito is clearly not it. He's a good backup, and Tyrod Taylor, he's probably going to be gone as well. So the Giants need to figure out the quarterback position most importantly. The big story here to me is the Eagles defensively. They didn't exactly put the Giants away. They allowed them to
no.
hang in there and almost complete a Hail Mary. And then Jalen Hurts with a bad pick six that allows the
Mhm.
Giants to get back into this game. The Eagles snapped their 3 game losing streak, but they're not hitting on all cylinders yet. And they need to figure it out as soon as possible with the playoffs right around the corner.
Yeah, and I mean, 2 of those 3 scores came after interceptions and turnovers
Yeah.
by Philadelphia, and that's not something I mean, the Giants are a 5-9 team. Like they're dysfunctional. You let them stay in that game. I mean, that's not great. And also, I mean, a quick shout out to, is it Adore Jackson?
Adoree Jackson. Yep.
Adore. He reached a
Yep.
top speed of 20.92 miles per hour on his 76-yard pick six, which is the third fastest speed on any pick six this season. Fastest play by a Giants ball carrier this season, offense or defense.
That
So
was a dope pick six too. He
it
was
was
gone.
beautiful. He was out of there.
Yeah.
So the Giants have some weapons. Obviously, they have some kinks to work out. Speaking of kinks, let's just circle back real quick. So the Giants have had some kicker injury issues this season. Original kicker Graham Gano, season-ending knee surgery in November. Randy Bullock comes in, hamstring injury last week in New Orleans. All right, so Cade York's gonna, come in. He's gonna come in this week. He's gonna start the game Monday. Injured his quad in practice. So they go and sign Mason Crosby, 39-year-old
Boy.
old, after playing 16 straight seasons in Green Bay. He comes in and, now he's making a 52-yard field goal in New York. The weird thing about this, though, his jersey number was number 21,
Yeah.
which
Looking
has
like
befuddled Giants fans. I mean, he wore number 2 in Green Bay. Obviously, he's not taking Tyrod Taylor's number. Um, but Tiki Barber's running back number, and Giants fans are completely befuddled by this. He went 3 for 3 in the game, so had a great game, 2 extra points, a 52-yard field goal. But I would love for someone to explain why he's wearing number 21.
yeah, I know. It's pretty interesting, but it was cool to see him gray-haired Crosby kicking some field goals for the Giants and
I mean, salt and pepper looks good on him. But now that he's played for someone else, Donald Driver is the only remaining Green Bay Packer to play 200 plus games with the Packers and never play anywhere else.
Oh, I thought you were gonna break some news like Donald Driver's coming back.
Oh God, no, he tired. No, but I mean, up until this season, Aaron Rodgers, Donald Driver, Mason Crosby, now we're down to one.
Yeah.
So he stands there alone. But let's move on to this game. I have already had to defend my faith in the Ravens, but man, did the 49ers play like shit in this game.
Yeah, and most notably Brock Purdy looked
Oh,
really bad. 4 interceptions and threw away his MVP case in the process. Some people are like, one game shouldn't cost you your MVP. That game did on national TV. A Super Bowl preview type build up for that game, and to throw 4 interceptions and look bad in the process. And the Ravens, man. Ooh wee, the Ravens look nasty,
they
and
looked mean. They looked good. Even
yeah,
even though the game started, I thought there was going to be a ton of controversy about this. I was kind of thinking it was going to be a close game. Um, Opening possession of the game, Lamar Jackson trips over a referee on a scramble. The referee is trying his hardest to get out of the way. He's backpedaling. Lamar like turns and runs, kind of like trips over him, results in a um what
Intentional grounding
intentional
safety.
grounding safety. There we go.
Yeah.
I mean, has anyone ever seen a contact with a referee directly result in points for the opponent before? Because I know it happens. I mean, it's just incidental contact. They don't really pay attention to it. They just keep playing. But this is the first time I've seen contact result in points for the other team.
Yeah,
So that was a little crazy. Luckily, it wasn't a 2-point game, so we didn't have to like, dig into that and deal with, the drama from that. But the 49ers had not had a 4 interception game since week 3 in 2015 at Arizona. So,
yeah,
and I would like your take on this because we've talked about multiple other games that had O lines that would not hold for anything. In this game, I mean, the 49ers have had some O-line injuries on and off all season. In this game, they ran out of offensive linemen to sub in. They pulled people off defense to play O-line. So yes, Brock Purdy had a shitty game, but it's really hard to get your ball to the correct target when you have people who don't even play on O-line trying to protect you and give you time to throw.
yeah. I mean, I agree that they, were battling through it on the offensive line, but to me, that wasn't the big takeaway from it. I mean, Purdy played bad,
He
and
did.
I don't think that. I mean, would a better offensive line have helped? Sure, but
He still would have had
the
at least two.
Ravens, I don't think we're going to lose to the 71
No,
Dolphins on that night. The
no, the
Ravens,
Ravens
and
were so good.
yeah, the Ravens, I mean, because the 49ers defense is elite too.
Hmm.
And the Ravens really took it to them. I'm in love with the way this Ravens team is playing right now. Yes, the 49ers need to get healthy in time for the playoffs for sure. But on paper, this is a Super Bowl preview. We're not just saying that. Like, if I'm predicting right now, this is my Super Bowl matchup.
Yeah.
And Now on that safety, I was pissed when it happened live because I'm like, that ref needs to get the hell out of there. I know it's not his fault. He tripped. He was trying to, but I'm like, that shouldn't count as a safety against Lamar. Like it should be a redo or something. But
Yeah. Um,
according to the rules, it's the right call, and I'm glad it
mhm.
didn't cost them the game. But it's like, get the fuck out of there, ref. Like,
Yeah, I
come
feel,
on
I mean,
now.
but as a referee, like he was like, oh, okay, he's dropping that way, cool. And he's, backpedaling, trying to get out of the way. Lamar is so fast. I don't think
Yeah.
any layman off the street who's refereeing a game is prepared to run backwards that quickly. Like it's just, I mean, it's hard to run backwards anyway, but like when you're trying to run away from Lamar, like I'm sorry, Alex, you would have gotten run over too. Like,
And
um,
it wasn't just that too. The Niners went for it on fourth down, and they got a bullshit defensive holding bailout call too.
yeah, I
And I'm
saw
like,
that one.
what is this? Like, why are the refs bailing out the Niners here? But it didn't impact the game, and the Ravens. I'm so impressed with the Ravens. Like Kyle Hamilton looks like an absolute stud out
Mhm.
there. Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen. This is a great linebacker matchup with Queen and Roquan against Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. Um,
Yeah, I love all four of those defensive players.
yeah,
And I was super, super stoked to see this matchup. I want to circle back to where you said people were talking about how this takes away his MVP shot. I never
yeah,
thought he should be MVP. I think
yeah.
Christian McCaffrey does a lot of the legwork for that off legwork, literally, for that offense. I don't think it's the quarterback year for MVP. I think it needs to be McCaffrey or Tyreek Hill. I don't think that quarterbacks have done enough on their own without their weapons. Like, yes, the Ravens had an amazing game here, but like, was it all the quarterback? No, the defense was great. The receivers were great. It was a
I will.
cohesive win.
I agree with you. Christian McCaffrey is very much deserving of it. He is huge for what the 49ers do, and he's drawing comparisons to Marshall Falk.
Hmm.
And it goes right along with that greatest show on grass that I like to call these Niners. Um, to me, I agree, Tyreek Hill, Christian McCaffrey. As of right now, they're giving it to Lamar Jackson, and I actually agree with it, and I'll tell you why. Lamar this year is playing better than when he was the unanimous MVP 3 or 4 years ago. This is the best version of Lamar Jackson I've ever seen, in the fact that he's now better mentally. His mental understanding of the game is so much better than it used to be. He's patient in the pocket, and he uses his athleticism to buy time and still look down the field for Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman and Odell Beckham and Isaiah Likely. And then when everything breaks down, his speed and elusiveness running the ball is the cherry on top. And I don't know, as a defense, how the hell do you defend this Ravens offense? And that's with Mark Andrews and Keaton Mitchell injured for the season. Like, their injury hit, and they're still almost impossible to defend, and it's all circled around one guy. You take Lamar Jackson off of this offense, and it's nowhere near what it is. Lamar is amazing this year.
Yeah, he's insanely good, but I would love for it to be a non-quarterback year.
Hmm.
It's been a long time. So I would just
Yeah.
like a non-quarterback, but I do think if it goes to a quarterback, it absolutely should be him. Um,
Well, and you think about the last time we had a non-quarterback. Remember that Adrian Peterson season when he won it? That was a special, special year.
Mhm.
And it
But I
takes
mean,
a performance like that. And
I
like
think if
Tyreek Hill,
Tyreek hit 2000,
yeah, but he's probably not going to now because of that injury.
yeah.
And if
I
he
think if he hit
had,
it, he would have been a shoe-in. And then
yeah, but
McCaffrey, I mean, if the Niners blow out a team 60 to something next week and he scores four, maybe. But
yeah,
at this point, I do think you're right. But it's funny, you look back at the teams that the Ravens have lost to, and you're like,
hmm,
how the hell? Like,
yeah,
so I mean, going back to what week 3, they lost to the Colts in overtime. Like the Colts. Like what? And then
yeah,
they lost to the Steelers in week 5.
yeah,
Like who, like it's just so strange. Like what were those teams? But one thing I'm really intrigued by is this matchup. Two of the best teams are our Super Bowl preview. They've both lost to the Cleveland Browns,
yeah,
and I am pulling for the Browns in the postseason,
yeah, me
and
too.
I
Uh,
don't know if it's gonna pay off, but I would love to see that matchup.
The Browns beat them in Baltimore, and I believe that was with Dorian Thompson Robinson. It might have been PJ Walker. I forget. We'll have to look that up, but that was in Baltimore, and the defense carried the day, and they just out physicaled Baltimore. And we heard Patrick
Yep,
Queen.
Deshaun Watson.
It was Deshaun, okay, and
Yep,
Deshaun played well too. I remember
he
that.
did. It
You're
was
right,
33 to 31. The 12th of November.
but in Baltimore
Hmm.
is a statement win for the Ravens, and Joe Flacco's or for the Browns, and Joe Flacco's playing so well, and it shows that the Browns are capable, and that's where it's going to be. If it's a Browns Ravens rematch in the playoffs, it'll be in Baltimore. So they've already proven they can win that.
And
Um,
that was a game where each team had a pick six.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
Baltimore came in and second snap of the game was a pick six against Cleveland.
off of
And I mean,
Deshaun, yeah,
they still recovered from that.
yeah.
And yeah, I'm just really excited to see how that AFC plays out this year. But guys, we've kind of talked your ears off, so I'm sorry about that.
Real
But
quick,
such
yeah,
good
real
football
quick.
this
So,
week.
so yeah, a ton to talk about. The so Ravens Dolphins. Patrick Queen is talking a lot of about we're gonna hit you in the mouth. We're not afraid of nobody, and talking about like fast break offense, basketball offense, like the Dolphins coming into Baltimore. This is a statement game, so I hope the Ravens don't let their guard down and get beat by that fast break offense team. So I hope the Ravens bring that nasty, hit you in the mouth defense. If they do that to the Niners and Dolphins in back to back weeks, the Ravens will be my favorite to win the entire thing. And that Ravens Browns playoff matchup, I hope we get it because that's going to be must see football.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. And speaking of the Browns, we've got the Jets coming to the Browns this
Thursday
week,
night.
tomorrow
Uh,
night. So I
yep.
guess tonight by the time you guys are listening to this.
Can't
Um,
wait for this matchup. But the Browns should kick their ass.
yeah. And, this is Joe Flacco facing his former team,
Yep.
chance to continue pushing the Browns into the AFC playoffs. I think it's going to be a great matchup. I think Flacco is going to be firing on all cylinders. And yes, the Jets played well this last week, but I think it's going to be a 2 to 3 score game in favor of the Browns.
Yeah, Browns by double digits. Trevor Siemian will start for the Jets with Zach Wilson still on concussion protocol. Browns looking for their fourth straight win. I think they get it done. The one thing to keep an eye on for Cleveland, for Flacco, 5 interceptions in his last 2 games. Going up against a good Jets secondary, don't turn the ball over. Try to limit that come playoff time. You're going to need to. You can't turn the ball over a lot and win in the playoffs. But we both love the Flacco as Backo storyline, and we're both rooting for the Browns to get. And we're both picking the Browns here to get their fourth straight win. Amari Cooper questionable with a heel injury, but he should play. And we'll see if the Browns can win out, go on a 5 game winning streak, take that into the playoffs. Go Cleveland, man. We're loving this storyline. The Browns are going to be a ton of fun to watch the rest of the year.
Yeah, I'm stoked. And guys, we'll be back with you in 2 days to recap that Browns Jets game and to give you our preview for the rest of the weekend for New Year's Eve weekend.
Yeah, I'm down 8 games now to Amanda, so week 17 is gonna when the comeback starts. Hopefully, I gain 4 games on her in week 17. But appreciate the support. Happy holidays. Enjoy the New Year's, and we'll be back at it on Friday night. Good shit as always, Amanda. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment, guys. Have a great week, and stay tuned for more interviews and content coming up. Peace out.